2nd, the time is 6 p.m. We're here for a Coppell City Council budget workshop to discuss our debt service and general fund. There is a quorum present, and I call the meeting to order. Citizens' appearance. Do we have anybody signed up to speak for the first citizens' appearance? No. Okay, we will defer all of the text until the second one then. All right, third item, debt services fund. Ms. Miller.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Like Kim's disclaimer on Tuesday night, the purpose of this workshop is to walk council through the debt service and the general fund budgets. We'll begin by going over the valuation breakdown on page 2 in your packet. This is the estimated value as of July 16th, 2021. At that point in time, the appraisal district had one more day of hearings to process, and then they need to enter all the results into the system before we can get final values. Just as a clarification, the date on the reports in your packet is July 19th. That's the date we ran them. The actual value date is for the prior day. That's why I'm saying as of July 16th. Normally, we receive the certified values on July 25th. But we did receive Dallas County's values today, so they're ahead of schedule, and we're currently reviewing those. But Denton County values we will not receive until end of day on the 26th. So we will have the calculated value, the city calculated value for your meeting on the 29th. Dallas County Tax Office calculates and certifies our values. And they do a calculation also, and ours is usually very close to their estimate or to their value. There's a 1 to 2 day time lag between what they process and what we can process, and that's usually the difference. But it's not very much when we can at least come forward on the 29th with some values for you. So the 2021 taxable value as of July 16th is $8,792,254,631. This is up $403,158,588, or 4.81% from the prior year. Of that increase, 13.13% is from new construction, 49.56 is from reappraisals, and 37.31 is from business personal property. Another way to look at that increase, a little over 105 million is from residential, a little over 151 million is from business personal property, and a little over 146 million is from the commercial properties. When you calculate the split between residential and commercial, 55.21 is residential and 44.79 is commercial. Over the last 4 years, we've seen a shift in that ratio from residential to commercial. In 2018, it was 58.55 was residential to a 41.45 commercial. Also on page 2, it shows you over the last 4 years, we have seen a declining growth rate from 8.44% in 2018, 5.99 in 2019, 4.27 in 2020, and I am anticipating that the 2021 rate will be less than the 2020 rate.
Do you think that 2021 is going to be below the 4.27?
Yes, sir.
I was actually expecting to see the appraised values go up more, just due to the real estate conditions. Is that because we've haven't done complete appraisals this year, or do you have an explanation for that?
I don't know, but when we did meet with Dallas Central Appraisal District, they told us to be very conservative in our estimates. They were anticipating a lot more appeals just because of COVID and that winter freeze, that people would be appealing their values.
The other thing too is recall that this is as of January 1 of 2020. So we were still in COVID, so well, we're still in COVID now. But the hot real estate market, if you will, where all this is going on, is in this fiscal year. So it'll be January of '22 that will reflect the potential significant increase.
So we're still set to see the big increases.
If everything holds, right, as it's been going.
So the good news is that we've seen a drop, well, it's not a drop, we've seen a change in the residential to commercial property. That trend continued.
Yes. Yes, it has continued over the last 4 years. So over that time, it's been a 3.34% shift from residential to the commercial. Okay, if you turn to page 3 in the packet, this is the value that we received from the appraisal district on May 14th. This is what we refer to as our preliminary number. Based on this number, it shows taxable value growing 12.26%. But that's before there were any appeals. The abatements were used, that they were estimated using 2020 values, not 2021. And Freeport exemptions had been based on the applications received and approved, and then they were estimating those that they still had to work. So that becomes our starting point for calculating our taxable value. In the middle of that page, it shows we do a 30-year average. It shows the average decline from preliminary to certified has been 5.55%. The highest decline was 11.64, which happened in 2002. And then our lowest decline had been in 1993, and it was 2.19. Okay, if you turn to page 4, same kind of spreadsheet, only this shows the value as of July 16th, showing the 4.81% increase. So from May 14th to July 19th, we lost 7.45% of that increase in value. And this is our highest loss since 2007, when we lost 10.86%. But as you go through there, you see it varies from year to year, and it all depends upon how many appeals, how many abatements they work before they actually send out preliminaries, and then any of the Freeport exemptions. And like I said, we did meet with Dallas Central Appraisal District, and they said to be very conservative, just based upon the number of appeals that they were anticipating. So, if you will turn to page 5, we developed our 21-22 budget based on a 0% growth while maintaining a flat tax rate of 58 cents. So the top part shows the assessed valuation, the proposed tax rate, showing you the revenue that will be received from property taxes. In the center of the page, that shows the split between our maintenance and operations, which is our general fund, and the interest and sinking, which is our debt service. There was a shift of 1.4422 pennies from the general fund to the debt service fund for fiscal year 21-22. And this was due to the 2021 debt issuance that we did earlier this year. That shift did result in a little over $1.2 million less tax revenue in the general fund for this next fiscal year. All right, if you'll turn to page 6.
Before we go on.
Yes.
Excuse me. Do you give us the equivalent no new rate, no new tax rate, and...
It's further into the presentation.
Thank you.
You're welcome. If you turn to page 6, this is our debt service walk forward. The debt service fund receives its revenues from property taxes, and the expenditures are for our bond principal, interest, and agency fees. The page 7 shows you our repayment schedule based on the years, and over the next 10 years we will repay 66.31%. And then over 15 years, we will repay 87.72% of the debt outstanding. So does anyone have any other questions on property values or the debt service? Okay, I will turn, do you have, sorry.
I'm trying to think. I think I know the answer to my question. Is there any other debt that we know, we don't know? That's why I'm having trouble with the question. Is there any other proposed debt that could be issued in the future that we know of?
Yes.
And, go ahead.
Royal Lane,
Yeah,
17 million.
Is that anywhere in here?
No, that is not.
Thank you.
Question.
Bijou?
Yeah, Jennifer, when we receive the proceeds from the Cypress Water,
Yes.
is that included here, or am I getting too ahead of you?
The debt we issued to purchase Cypress Waters is included in here.
Right.
When we sell and get the proceeds, there are some steps we need to follow. We need to call those bonds. We will pay off those bonds, and then we need to let the IRS know all these things. But that will impact next year's tax rate. Because it's not been done yet, we can't take it out of our debt service.
How much money left over in that bond?
It was $9 million. It's like 2.86 cents of the tax rate is for the North Lake bonds.
Thank you.
Okay, that's it. I will turn the presentation over to Mr. Land.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. A curveball. All right, as we get ready to go into the general fund, Casey, you want to hand it to me, or do you want to do it?
Oh, it's your call. I'm mobile.
I just want to take a few minutes just to kind of set up the conversation for the general fund. I'm going to start with a perspective on both revenues and expenditures. What you have before you, just kind of visually, this is in your packet, so this is information that just to make you aware. In 2020, the adopted budget for expenditures was right around $72 million. And then in December, January of that year, we got the notice on the rule, and so we immediately made reductions to our expenditures for that year. You see what the revenues did. So kind of keep that in mind, 1920. So then this past year, when we adopted the budget and went through the discussions, we brought down both our expenditures and our revenues. And so in essence, we reduced, about $7-8 million in expenditures. And we did that through various methods. And you see where we also said, with the rule, we'll act as if the rule was in place, because we didn't know for sure if businesses would start doing it or not, or anything along those lines. So the question of, well, what have we done to reduce expenditures? We have significantly reduced expenditures in a short amount of time. And then this year, the budget that you have before you shows the revenue, reduced revenues again, I think you've been hearing, at 55%. And then it shows another reduction in the expenditures, right? So over the last 2 years, the sales tax has continued to stay strong. And so we've been able to set that aside, while at the same time reducing our expenditures and still holding our expenditures where we had planned for them to be. So that gives you a little bit of an idea about what's happened with expenditures and revenues. So with SB2, which goes to your question about the no new revenue rate, and the 3.49 voter, anything above that for voter approval, just wanted to show you. So at 58 cents, the no new tax revenue number stays consistent across the board at roughly about $48 million, right? So, go ahead. I'm sorry. You want me to go ahead?
No, that's okay.
What?
Just explain a little bit more what that is.
Oh, okay. So what that is on the $48 million is taking existing properties on January 1 of each year and basically saying that even though their values may be increasing, from a tax revenue standpoint, the city through SB2 gets a number that basically says on those same properties, this is what the tax rate would be to generate the same amount of revenue, right? So let's say your home increased in value $100,000. I'm just using a round number. For us to tax on that home, and we generated, say, $10,000, for us to tax on that home, to generate the same $10,000, instead of the tax rate being 58 cents, maybe it needs to be 57 cents. Does that make sense, everybody? Okay. So if there's 3% growth, say the properties are growing in value, and just again, arbitrarily picking 3%, that seems to be a reasonable number to use, then in theory, the way SB2 works is that the tax rate would continue to come down while there would be no new revenue generated through the property tax system. So the $48 million becomes basically your foundation, right? That stays the same. Now we do get the benefit of new growth. And since Coppell is built out, it's different than Frisco, right? Or Prosper or Salina. With new growth, they generate a lot of revenue off of new growth. We just don't have that same ability. So it's a practical application, okay?
So I'm going to ask a question. Does anybody see the risk of following that curve? So what happens when your assessed values fall? You can't automatically go in and make up the difference because you're fixed by the limit. So when you start talking about long-term planning, this SB2 really impacts our ability to go out and plan for the future because of this downward curve that is basically being forced on us. This is not an easy one. I want to go slow here so we all catch it. This has been going on for about 2 years, and I just now think I'm starting to get the gist of why this really wasn't a good idea for us from the city. Don?
Can you read, if appraised values fall in the future, you can't raise the tax rate? I thought you can.
You
as long as you don't go across
the 3.499.
Put it at
an increase in revenue.
if it's over that.
Yeah.
Well, no,
For the no new revenue rate, let's just, again, please, just fictitious numbers.
Sure.
If the appraised value goes down in the community, to generate, in this case, the $48 million, they're going to tell us this is what the tax rate needs to be. So right now it's 58 cents. Say the appraised values go down. They're going to say that the tax rate needs to be 60 cents. So then you as an elected official are going to potentially be faced with, are you going to raise the tax rate, or are you going to eat, if you will, whatever that difference in revenue is?
okay. That's what I wanted to clarify, because I thought I heard you say you couldn't raise the tax rate. That's not true. That is what you would do to get the same dollars.
I won't say would do, it's a political.
It's a very difficult.
To get to the same dollars, you
Right,
got to raise.
right.
You would have the ability to raise the tax rate to get the same.
It's a very
revenue.
difficult political thing to do.
Okay.
Right.
But that's on a hypothetical if it goes down.
It will go down.
At some point. I mean, it's cyclical.
It's always cyclical. It's just a matter of when.
And hopefully this council in the near future won't have to deal with it.
Based on current economic, it probably won't. But that's that's part of that long-term vision that we've got to protect for the future for.
And so I'll just kind of, to the next point. So with 3% growth in values, right? So the same chart, the no new revenue tax rate, we're showing it there. Basically you're going roughly from 58 cents down to, what is that, a little over 51 cents. With the increase in growth and then using the 3.499, you can see where the tax rate, you'd have the flexibility to increase the tax rate below what the voter threshold is, and that is the additional revenue that you could keep or gain or utilize, whatever it is that you decide that you want to do, and still be within the limits of SB2, right? And the same goes for if you decide to say, you know what, under the 3.499, in this case, 58 cents falls under that 3.499. Let's say that you wanted to say that the tax rate stays at 58 cents for the next several years as we go through sales tax stuff, right? It will be above the no new revenue rate. It'll be below the 3.499, and the revenue, you know, it continues to be raised. The other thing that happens as you, it sounds funny, I guess, as you maintain that revenue, whatever it is you gain, the tax generation, that becomes your new rate, right? There's some variables, but that becomes your new rate. But in this case, by keeping it 58 cents, whatever that gap is, that's just all you would keep. Does that make sense, what I'm saying? At 58 cents, you will generate more revenue each year as there's 3% growth. How about that?
Right.
Because of the growth.
Right.
Yes.
Which is, quite honestly, we've also got to deal with inflationary pressures within the city each year. Salaries, this year was construction.
Yeah.
What,
So anyway,
what were you saying about the base for the next year, though? Is
the base, so your base, so let's just.
does the base go up every year? I mean,
If you kept it at 58 cents and it generated this amount of money, that became your new base.
Okay, that's, okay. I was thinking
And
you
then,
had.
and then next year, instead of being the no new revenue rate, which would have gone lower, it may be a little bit higher, but you still keep, if you kept it at 58 cents, you'll still generate more, right?
Right.
So that's just how it works.
Okay.
It's strange calculations if you've ever seen the multiple pages that come out. So the next thing I want to just chat about, again, is this is setting up for the discussion that y'all are going over tonight, is on the sales tax implementation strategy. So you remember I mentioned in 1920 and 2021 that we have sales tax that's coming in over what is budgeted, right? And I think, remind me, it's around 17 to 18 million dollars total for the last 2 years. Okay, that's over and above what we have budgeted. And so the idea would be, and that's what you're going to see tonight, that as we go into these next 3 years trying to understand what the implementation of 334 does to us. Granted, we're in the lawsuit, but also understand in 2023, we already know that the destination sales tax legislation is going to be reintroduced. So we have that uncertainty again. So our approach and strategy is to start to utilize some of that sales tax overage for the last couple of years to make up the difference between the expenditures and the revenues as it relates to one-time purchases. So we are not using the sales tax overage to help fund any maintenance and operations. We're just using it for capital and enhancements, one-time services, one-time contract, or something along those lines. So this is strictly for illustrative purposes only, so don't get so fixated on, but just to show how it worked. So this year, I think it's to the tune of about 1.2, is that right? 1.2 million. So you see, okay, a little bit comes over. And then just based on some forecasting, again, do not get locked into the numbers, in 22, 23, use a little bit more. In 23, 24, you use a little bit more. Over the next 3 years, we should get a pretty good feel of what the implications of 334 are. And I will say to you that we are going to work to continue to reduce expenses, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. Continue to reduce expenses, but this is how we plan to present to the council a budget utilizing the previous 2 years of, I'll call it storage. Y'all have heard me kind of say before, it's like we've had the benefit and now it's kind of getting ready for the constriction, right? And so we've created flexibility through our planning to be able to address that. Okay? So the last thing, and if you wanted to go ahead and turn to the last page in your packet, I'm just going to walk through this, and then I'll be turning it over to Kim. It's page 20. This is the walk forward or the fund balances, and usually this is the thing that we go over last, but I wanted to go over it here just because I wanted to kind of walk you through what we're doing. So you had a beginning fund balance of 87 million, you have the amended revenues, amended expenditures, and then you have a budgeted fund balance projected to be at the end of September of roughly 93 million. So this year we have budgeted revenues at 61, budgeted expenditures at 63. That's what Kim's going to go over. And so you have a fund balance at the end of 9/30/22 of 91 million. So very solid position. When you go to the next section, this is where we have restricted funds. By charter, we have a 10% reserve of the 22 budget, so that of expenditures, so that's 6.3 million. And then you have these restricted funds. So we get funds for 911, we get funds for public access education channel, and then a solid waste education, which is really nominal to speak of. But you know, we have access. We can only use those funds for certain purposes, right? They're restricted funds. And then we get to the portion of the fund balance that the council created some general policies around. So on top of the 10% by charter, the council adopted a policy, a guideline that said we're going to have an additional 15% in the fund balance. And then for some of the council members, if you recall, and we haven't done this in the last couple of years because of the sales tax rules in SB2, but after we do an audit, we come to you and we tell you if there's any excess funds, and the council has the option of being able to allocate those for those particular purposes. Any excess used for economic development, for revenue threats, and for projects. And so, for example, revenue threats are exactly what we're going through right now as far as the sales tax. So the council just set up a fund to be able to help offset some of those revenue threats, right? Plus, it's also there if there's ever an audit in our community where a business gets audited and they have inadvertently been paying sales tax to us, and we then have to pay it back to the state. I know other communities have had to do that. I don't know if we've actually ever had that happen to us. I know where we have received sales tax because it went to the wrong place, but I don't know that we've had to pay. And it comes from us. It doesn't come from the business. The next section is what, and the next several sections are what are, I guess they used to be called designated funds, right, Jennifer?
Yes.
So now through accounting standards, it's called assigned funds. And so if you remember the other night, Jennifer was talking about the CRDC, the maintenance. So when the CRDC was first set up, there was an end date that was in that original election. And so what the council decided to start doing then is they started doing that transfer that Jennifer talked about, which built up, so that if that fund did come to an end, there was money so that the council could plan and kind of weed off, if you will, the CRDC funds. And so we have been allocating out of that because that's the appropriate use. Then there's the sales tax reserve. That is because, I guess it was 2 years ago, we received a really big bump in sales tax. It was really odd because we could see who we're receiving sales tax from. We can't share it, but we could see. And it was a new payer. We had never seen it before, and it was really different. And so we actually followed up with the company to find out what was going on because we wanted to make sure it was the right thing. And we followed up with the comptroller. The comptroller told it was right, but they never put that in writing. And the way that the comptroller can do an audit is they can go back and capture 4 years. And so what we did is we actually set this aside, and this is going on year 3.
We're in year 2 now.
We're in year 2 of setting this aside just in case we were to get audited and being told, nope, you shouldn't have got those funds. So that's why it's there, as called a reserve. I will tell you that one of the things we're talking about with the implementation of 3.334, that we will probably be doing something very similar to this for probably our top 4 or 5 ones that are in question, just to help protect ourselves. Because if they keep paying, and we don't think based on the definition they should, it could come back to bite us. So you may see something on that. And then the next few projects you just see, or programs you see, are building code, zoning code update, time to do that. The economic development program, that's set up because the council said if we have a business comes along and we want to be able to do something, I think that's what we ended up doing with Berry, isn't that right? We utilized some of those economic development funds for the, was that the gas line? Or that was the some utility line? So that's what it was there for.
300,000.
Yeah. And then personnel emergency cost, and the way that we explain that basically is FMLA was being budgeted in a different fund that was actually in the tax rate and property tax. Workers' comp, those two. Did you ever find out what there's a couple more.
We called it admin leave, just any type of leave.
Oh, that causes overtime, especially in the fire department. Okay. And then lastly, this is where 334 comes into play. So this is that money I was talking to you about, the roughly 17 million, plus the sales tax recoveries. So what we've done is we've set that aside, and we've said that what we're going to do is we're going to fund the capital replacement fund and the IT replacements. And so in the budget, when we talk about this 1.2 million coming over, it is for those one-time purchases. It's for the capital replacement fund. It's for some computers and that type of thing. So it's a designated use. It's one-time expenditures. And even when you go through all that, when you get to the very bottom line, the unreserved, undesignated is sitting at $34 million. And the question always comes up as far as, well, for rating agencies, when they look at us, what do they want us to do? As you know, we just got rated this past summer, or early summer, late spring, I guess. And in that rating process, we maintained our AAA in both Moody's and Standard & Poor's. And the first thing that they told us was that you put a plan together 2 years ago, and you've worked the plan. You've done exactly what you said you were going to do. In that process, in the past, we've talked to Jason Hughes, our financial advisor, about this undesignated, unreserved. And if you recall, there's no rule of thumb out there, but based on the size of our community, based on the volatility of sales tax and everything along those lines, and also to maintain the AAA rating, they expressed that the number shouldn't get below about $28 million. So we're safely in that range in terms of what's going on. So I say all this to you because as you go through the budget this evening, you're in a solid position. We're working the plan that we started on back in 2019. We continue to make progress. Now we're doing the implementation. We've got an opportunity to see how things work, and we've got the flexibility and the agility to make it happen. So I'll be happy to answer any questions. At this point, though, Kim's ready to go through the budget.
Oh, I'm sorry, Brianna.
Can you go back to the one that had the IT on the bottom? And because this is just for clarification, because you said 1.5 million one-time fees, or what did you say?
No, this
1.2.
This year, I think it's 1.2. Of that 17.7
Right.
or 18 million, we're going to be tapping it by about $1.2 million.
Okay, gotcha. I was trying to understand where that fits. Okay.
That's that chart where I was saying kind of little chunks were coming off.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
That's all.
Yeah, Mike, I have a question.
Yeah.
Can you please tell us the history of the 15% fund Providence per policy? When did that implement?
Oh, I'm gonna have to defer to somebody that's been here longer than me. I've been here since 2012 and it's been in place.
Yes. That happened during we were in New York at a bond rating agency, and a council member said during that meeting, we were going to do an additional 15% on top of the 10%. That's when it happened.
What year was that?
Oh, I couldn't tell you, but it was probably, I'd say early 2000s.
Okay, so this council can discuss if we want to eliminate that, correct?
You can, yes.
Okay.
Which number is that you're talking about?
The
The
15%.
15% additional
Fund balance.
funds that we are serving?
Fund balance per policy.
Yeah. Yeah, that is your policy.
Right.
Mhm.
So one more thing.
I'm not leaving, I just didn't hear this. No, I'm not answering my question.
I just wanted to hear your comments on this. As of yesterday, we have $400 million additional assessed values, right?
That's as of last Thursday.
Last Thursday. Right. So times 0.58 cents, we are going to get additional revenue with the flat rate we are talking about.
The two ifs. If you decide to keep 58 cents as your tax rate and the appraised values come in above 48 million, you're going to generate the 48 million based on that? Yes. For every for every percentage point, it's about $400,000. So a 4% is an additional $1.6 million.
Okay, so that's an additional revenue.
Right. We're not counting on it right now. It's
I
not
understand,
anywhere in
yeah,
the.
that's potentially it's available for us if the assessed value stays the way it is now.
Roughly, yes.
One more thing, the 58 cents that you mentioned, it's a combined debt plus
Maintenance and
maintenance
operations.
and operation.
Right.
For example, Cypress Water, 2.7, she just mentioned next year, can be reduced from that 58 if it stays back, right?
It would come off of the debt service side, yes, sir. The
So
M
that-
and O side wouldn't be affected, it would be just the debt
So
service.
that
side.
could mean 55.3.
If that's what you choose to do,
Right,
and that's
I
the way
just
it
wanted
works.
everybody's aware of that.
Right.
That's a
Assuming you
possibility.
don't issue any
Right.
additional debt.
Additional debt.
Right.
Additional.
Don?
Thank you.
To clarify on the no new tax calculation,
Mhm.
it's only existing property that's limited by that? Is that any new build is not,
Right,
does not go into that?
It's not counted as part of the no new revenue rate.
Okay, so it's just on the what was in place last year.
That-
Okay, so
that-
anything,
that-
any growth really becomes ours, right? I mean, whatever that is.
Yes, and it becomes the new base for the next year.
Right, okay, okay.
That's the reason why I say that those are theoretical, the way that it works, until you actually start getting the numbers and doing the calculation, how it balances out.
Yeah.
But that's generally conceptually how it works.
Okay.
And I think when we started in 2019, we did a calculation on what SB2 would be, just again, using factors, kind of keeping constant and everything. I think this would have been the first year that would have shown a negative as far as what was potentially going to happen, where our expenses before 334 came into place, where our expenses were significantly exceeding the revenues as it relates to the results from property tax.
We've been planning for years.
Yes, we've been getting ready, that's for sure. 334 kind of forced our hand.
Any other questions? John?
I know the Blackberry Farm, they're just beginning. Is there a expectation as what that would generate
No,
at all?
I don't know.
74 homes, probably $500,000 to $700,000 range.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the first part of your
The
question.
Blackberry Farm.
Blackberry Farm.
Oh, okay.
Gosh,
They're
I
starting
know.
construction.
I heard it's
Yeah.
starting at 700.
And just put that in perspective, come January 1st, say that the streets still aren't in,
Yeah.
then the values for 22, 23, even though some houses may be on the ground in 22, won't count because it's effective January 1 of 2022. So even if it did come around, we wouldn't see the growth until the January
2023.
1st, 2023 tax
Good.
year.
I mean, Red Hawk, there's still 2 more lots left to sell, so that's been on the market for how many years now? And so,
6, 7?
yeah,
Yeah,
so
I can see.
I wouldn't expect a quick absorption rate of that 74
Blackberry
homes.
one either.
And isn't there some type of agreement with Carrollton on Blackberry?
On the annexation, I'll have to go back. There was, but I don't recall it off the
I
top of
don't
my
know
head.
the particulars of it, but I
There's
know.
it's the portion across the creek. So this side of the creek was already in Coppell. There was
Okay.
a small portion across the creek where they're gonna bridge over to.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
up here, too.
What's that?
Flooding issue.
Don?
Now, in fairness, something like the Blackberry Farms, there's some incremental infrastructure though that would have to be supported by the increased tax rate.
There's some
right? I mean,
value, yes.
some expense that would be, like the Red Hawk lots, that's probably gonna be sort of all gravy, but, because infrastructure is there. A new development, there would be some expense that would come along with it.
In time, yes.
Okay.
I mean, but they'll turn it over as public improvements to us. That's correct.
Okay.
Anybody have anything else? Kevin?
Or just kind of piggyback on that question. When a developer does turn it over, what's typically the lifespan of that before we have to start making improvements? Is it 20 years?
Hopefully it'd be longer than that.
30 years?
You know, in terms of the roads and everything, at a minimum 20.
Minimum 20, okay.
Good evening. So I will be covering the revenues and expenditures of the general fund. I wanted to start out just with this overall comparison of the revenues and expenditures. So it's showing you the adopted 2020, adopted 2021, and the proposed 2022. When the change column is comparing the adopted 2021 to the proposed 2022, so you can see that the proposed budget is $2.5 million less than the current year budget, and as far as revenues, and the expenses are about $1 million
Kim, I'm
less.
sorry, what page are you on?
Just up here on the
Okay.
screen. No page yet. Just wanted to give a quick overview. And this slide also shows that when you compare it to 2020, revenues are down about $11.5 million for the proposed 2022 budget, and expenditures are down about $8.8 million when you compare it. And we'll go to the next slide. And the proposed revenues, you can see that on page 13 in your packet. Or page 11 and 12 shows you the dollars. This shows you the percentages and dollars, but if you want to see the breakout. So the primary reason, as I said, revenues are being decreased, and the primary reason that revenues are being decreased, first, as Jennifer mentioned, the property tax revenue category is decreasing by $1.4 million. Now, I know Jennifer stated in her presentation that property tax is decreasing by 1.2, but Jennifer addressed property taxes, and I'm looking at the category as a whole, and the category includes economic development agreements. So, and those decrease your property tax revenue as a whole. The next area that's decreasing is the sales tax revenue category. Compared to the current year adopted, the proposed budgeted sales tax revenue is 45% of the current year amended budget. And the current year amended budget is about $21 million, $20.9 million. And again, this reduction, it's a 55% reduction, and it's due to the change in Rule .334. The next category that's seeing a decline is the charges for services. This area primarily includes recreation fees, and although the city's facilities are open, attendance has not returned to pre-pandemic levels, and so the proposed budget is more in line with 2020 actual revenue for this category. Other revenues is another revenue category that's decreasing. And this category is decreasing first because of the transfer in from CRDC, as Tamara mentioned on Tuesday. The transfer out from CRDC is based on sales tax, and because sales tax is decreasing, then this transfer coming into the general fund is also decreasing. The other area under other revenues is interest income, and we're projecting a decrease in interest income, and that's just primarily due to the rates are still very low, and I'm not hearing that the Fed is looking at increasing the Fed's fund rate yet. Now these reductions, these categories that are being reduced are offset by an increase in the administrative services category. So if you recall, when I talked about water sewer, the water sewer fund reimburses the general fund for the services that it provides, like HR, city manager service, finance, enterprise solutions. Well, this budget provides a reimbursement from Drainage Utility District, the cemetery, CRDC, crime control, the juvenile court case manager, and the infrastructure maintenance fund, and all of that, Tamara, it's consistent with what Tamara provided you on Tuesday. So you would see the corresponding transfer out from those funds. I would tell you that a cost allocation study was done last year, and that's what these numbers are based on, what this transfer is based on. The consultant recommended that these other funds also reimburse. Some final comments regarding revenues is that historically property tax revenue has been between 52 and 54% of total general fund revenues. The property taxes proposed in this budget are 63.3% of total general fund revenues. Historically, sales tax has represented 28% of general revenues, and the proposed budget, sales tax is 17.3%. And again, that's due to the rule change. So about 80% of the general fund budgeted revenues are from property taxes and sales taxes. And do you have any questions? I kind of went through that fast.
Oh, I'm sorry, DJ.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Question for you. FY21 budget is amended, it's 23.5 million in sales tax, right? 23.5.
Right, for the category, it's down, it's the 20 because we have the rebates that reduce it.
Right, yeah. So my question for you is, our year starts from October 1st to September 30th, right? So far, until July, what have we collected in sales tax?
So I have through June 30th, what we've collected is 19.6.
Okay, so we are close, getting close.
And just for everybody to understand too, welcome to governmental accounting. In October and November, we will be receiving sales tax that's collected in September, in August and September, because there's basically a 2-month lag. So the first month that we'll actually see if anybody has implemented the rule is going to be in the December reports. So that's going to be the first time that we can actually come to you, and it'll be meeting in January, that we can come to you and say, okay, this looks like the first time, we've got anything that is starting to make us, we can pinpoint. Does that make sense? So while we're planning for October 1st, because the way it rolls, just as I said, what will happen is the 21-22 fiscal year for sales tax will still be flowing in 23 in the months of October and November. Right? It plays catch up.
So if I heard you correctly, what I heard, the 19 million that we have collected so far is from October through maybe April? Because you got the June 30 report, that's 2 months delayed, right?
So June had been sent to the state in May, collected by the vendors in April.
Okay, so that itself 2 months there.
Right. Yeah.
Then we have additional 4 more months to go.
Right.
We already collected 19 million.
Right.
So we're going to be collecting more than 23 from
Possibly.
Right.
We still have to review those reports and see how much of those may be associated with the sales tax audit that we're doing, because then we get a whole bunch all at once. It's really not that month, so we'll have to analyze that.
Okay. It's not divided evenly each month.
I understand, yeah, I understand, month varies.
Right.
Kevin?
So you said December of this year will be the first time we can really start to see
What the impact?
what the impact is. Did COVID affect December of 2020 enough, like, for that, to get a solid baseline on that? Like, did it drop in 2020?
So that would have been December of 19, no. Wait, December of 20.
December of 20, because we were in the middle of COVID. So are we going to have a good number on December of 2020 to balance that, or to compare that from? This is my question.
We might.
We didn't see much of a decline, correct?
We're starting to see the increases now coming in to sales tax because of the rebound from COVID.
Gotcha. Okay.
And because the way the law works, at no point in time will we ever be able to publicly say any particular company, right? But Susan we've created a new spreadsheet that Susan is able to do those immediate comparatives. So we'll know, like during COVID when it first started going, we were trying to see who was dropping and everything along those lines, and then all of a sudden our numbers started coming in a lot better. But you could see the companies immediately impacted by COVID.
Gotcha.
Right, in terms of what was going on. That's going to be the same way here. We'll know, there'll be enough of a change that we'll know something is afoot.
Okay.
Because we saw a lot of it shift from like the restaurants and stuff to the online purchases.
Got it. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Okay, so I'll move to expenditures, and I'm going to cover expenditures by division. And before I get into each of the divisions, I did want to make one comment that applies to all of the divisions, and that is the change between current year adopted and the 2022 proposed. There is a decrease for the salaries and benefits classification, and the decrease is attributed to the net impact of the merit increases for general employees, and then the step increases for public safety. And then that is offset by the unbudgeted frozen positions that were added, and reconciling actual medical elections to what's being budgeted. And so having that clarification, I'm going to start with the general government division, and this is where mayor and council, city manager, city secretary, finance, HR, enterprise solutions, those community information services, legal, community development are all represented in this category. And it represents $14.7 million of total general fund expenditures. This is about $1.5 million decrease when compared to the current year adopted. And I'm sorry, you can look at page 18 if you want to see the pie charts in your packet. And I'm on the top two pie charts. So general government is decreasing about 1.5 million, and the decrease is the net effect of a couple of some decreases that are offset by some increases. And so first, the current year adopted budget included $1.2 million for the Beltline Road project, which is not in the proposed budget. So it was a one-time expenditure of last year. So that money was budgeted then, and it's not in this budget. Also, the current year adopted included items related to COVID that aren't included in the proposed 2022 budget. So those decreases were offset by a couple of increases. The first one is an increase in the cost of participating in the governmental agency risk pool, because we added fire station number 4 and we added phase 2 of the cemetery to the risk pool coverage. We also have included the capital replacement transfer increased because we are replacing 4 ambulances this year. And so the amount that's included in the general government is just the differential between what we already have in the capital replacements fund and what we're anticipating these to cost. So there was a little bit more needed. The next division is public safety, and this includes police, fire, emergency management, building inspections, animal services, and environmental health. And it represents about $25.9 million of the total general fund expenditures. This is about a $256,000 decrease when compared to the current year adopted. The decrease, again, is the net effect of some increases and decreases. There were some one-time purchases in the current year budget that aren't in the proposed. The environmental health current year adopted budget included costs for a solid waste contract consultant. That's not included in the 2022 budget. Then that was offset by the inclusion in the current proposed budget of improvements for the dog run at the animal shelter. Are there any questions over public safety or general government? Kind of break them up and do 2 and 2. Is that good? Okay. So then the next division is public works.
Kevin has
Oh,
a
I'm sorry.
question.
I'm begrudgingly raising my
Okay.
hand because I'm really don't want to open a can of worms. So, it jumps out to me that the police budget is lower this year than it was last year. The whole defunding the police thing instantly comes to mind. So can you tell me about that? And, because it looks like it's about, what, $400,000 less, and what the implications are?
Right. So that's the salary and benefits true-up that I spoke about.
Okay.
So if they're getting their merit increases, they still have some unfunded positions that the chief has said can remain unfunded, and then it's the reconciliation of the medical cost coverage.
Is there any implication to us for that being, like the literal amount just being less than it was last year?
No, they did not. In this past session, they did not approve any legislation that affected the cities that are under 250,000.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it doesn't.
Okay, it does, that, I just want to make sure that piece is very clear. And then, but just to be very clear, that anyone that is watching, we are not defunding the police. We are not doing anything like that, right?
Correct.
Thank you.
So we are also getting some fund from the school resource office?
Yes,
50% is coming from the school.
yes. Just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you.
The chief told us in council session, last council session, that he's adequately staffed.
Excellent.
And so he's not receiving any pressure to cut costs, because if he needed it, he would get it.
Absolutely, he would get that support if he felt he needed it. So thank you for bringing that to light, Councilman Long. Thank you.
Okay,
Anybody have any other public statements to make?
I was asking a question.
Continue on.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. So next is the Public Works Division, which includes Public Works, Fleet, Facilities, Streets, Traffic, and Planning. It represents about $11 million of the total general fund expenditures. Now this division is about $993,000 more than the current year adopted. First, the main increase for this is the transfer to IMF, which Tamara talked about on Tuesday. Streets, we transfer for streets and facilities. They're also increasing to expand the holiday lights to the bridges, the Art Center, and some more in Old Town. They're developing an electric vehicle strategic plan with electric vehicle charging stations. And then adding the fire station number 4 and phasing in more of the cemetery is increasing pest control, fire alarm inspections. We're also increasing the HVAC service contract for these additional facilities. In addition, the traffic budget increased slightly to perform some pavement striping and to upgrade the pedestrian crossing equipment. And then Public Works is also expanding their GIS licensing to enterprise-wide to accommodate the use of the asset management software. Any questions on Public Works? Okay, the last division is the Culture and Rec, which includes Life Safety Park, the library, parks, core, camps, the community programs, the senior center, tennis center, and the biodiversity education center. And it represents about $11.4 million of the total general fund proposed expenditures. This is about $277,000 decrease when compared to current year adopted. And really the decrease is, as I stated earlier, with the salary and benefits. And then they have an increase in services for holiday lights, and then they have a decrease for their credit card fees, because if you recall, council passed to start passing along the debit and credit card fees to customers. Are there any questions as far as expenditures?
Yes, Mr. Land has one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, it's not a question, it's just a statement. One of the things that is in the operations of both the core and the library is the additional dollars for the hours and being open the same hours pre-COVID. So the hours till 10 p.m. at the core like they've done before, the full hours on the weekends, and same for the library, the full hours during, there's actually something pretty neat that's happening with the library next year. The full hours for the library, including open 7 days a week. The cool thing that's happening with the library, if y'all recall, Dennis did a presentation about the extended hours, meaning, let's say we close at 8, whatever, that the library, through the technology, and they're doing some testing right now, so it's not ready, will be able to be open till 11 p.m. every night, even though it won't be manned. So
check in.
there'll be a kind of a code
Right.
that you can get in and out. I don't know enough about it yet because I haven't tested it. If you want to go by afterwards, apparently they're testing it according to Dennis right now. So anyway, so I just wanted to, that's been made abundantly clear. We want to make sure that we're going back to pre-COVID on those services, and this budget through the M&O, through the tax rate and the sales tax, that's all part of being baked into the base budget.
So that will happen in October 1st?
Yeah, if tonight everything goes right and, y'all don't say don't do it, we'll actually start the process because, as you know, our hiring process takes a while, and that'll be the green light we give them.
Sooner than October 1st?
Well, it'll be October 1st with the budget.
Right.
If we can get them sooner, I can come to you and we can amend the budget accordingly, this year's budget. So that's the reason why I say if you give us a green light, we're good to go.
Don?
Curiously, so you said we're returning to hours for library and core, but it looks like the budget is still smaller than it was last year. So are there other things that we're...
We talked about that this afternoon. I think part of it has to do with the way we designated it. And I don't know that we have it necessarily in the library budget or in the core budget. I'm just saying, we met this afternoon on it. We identified the dollars. I just don't know if they're in the right department yet.
It looks like we're doing it on fewer overall dollars.
So
Well, but there's
remember,
also...
we did the true up
We did the true up on the medical.
Oh, okay.
and things like that.
Okay. Okay.
So it's a combination, but I do know, based on our conversation this afternoon, that we set it up, and we just had to, when we met this afternoon, we just got to clean that up. They're there. We just
Can you explain that a little more, please, Jennifer? You said...
the medical true up.
Yeah.
What Kim's talking about.
So they did a reconciliation comparing what do we usually budget for medical coverage for each employee compared to what are the employees actually taking, and they've reconciled that process.
That's why the library budget is lower, but we still can operate in the pre-COVID hours?
No, I don't think no.
Okay.
That's just why, in general, the budget is less than current year. the proposed budget is less than current year.
Let me just clarify.
Right, I think I understand, that's what I'm trying to say. When we met this afternoon and
We
we
may
went
have
through
placed
it,
it in the wrong
we
division.
identified for the additional hours for the core and for bringing back the folks to get the library fully open. We don't have it in the right place. It's not in the library.
Okay.
That's because when we had the discussion about doing it, I just said we need to reserve this amount. That's what they did, they just didn't put it in the library. So it's not showing up in that account yet.
Okay, that's why it's lower.
Right.
That's answers to our
Right.
question.
So I think the number is around 75,000 based on what it is. So I think that number should increase by about 75,000, which is still lower, right, in terms of what's going on.
But the weeks before, the library director did a presentation, they're converting to part-time
Right.
to full-time with no additional cost.
I think
It was a minimal.
Very minimal.
There was
Yeah.
some-
Right.
40,000.
And that's why I say,
Yes.
when you ask the question if we can do it sooner,
Yeah.
if we walk out of here tonight and I tell Dennis, okay, go ahead and start posting for that position and everything along those lines, if there's a way to make it work sooner, I'll come back to you and amend just like we do like that, I'll come back and amend the budget with you and we'll make it happen as quickly as we can. Because it's a nominal cost at this point, it's a timing issue,
For both,
yeah.
core and,
Well, the core is just additional hours,
right.
like, in terms of what's going on.
Kevin?
Mike, were you saying that the additional 75,000, that goes into that's the total cultural and recreational, the
It would
11
go-
million?
It would go into the library, and then that would add $75,000 to it, so the bottom line would go up about $75,000.
Yeah, okay, cool. I just want to make sure.
Right.
It was just on that bottom line.
Yeah.
It will, the culture and recreation
Culture and
line.
recreation.
Yes, that's right. And that.
Perfect.
The other thing too, well, I don't mean to,
Go ahead.
are you still going?
Go ahead.
Well, no, in my setup, when I got so fixated on the questions about the 3.44, the budget that you're hearing also includes, when we talk about health insurance, one of the things that we're identifying, so go back to the conceptual chart that showed the expenditures higher than the revenues in the next several years. Based on what we're thinking, as we look at the numbers, we probably still need to freeze about another 10 to 12 positions over the next several years. And so one of the ways that we can get that accomplished is through our retirees. They're not retirees yet. They've been with us for 25 or more years. We have about 20 employees who fit in that category. We don't expect them all to take the benefit if we offer it, but we're recommending in the budget that we would pick up their health insurance premium until age 65. And that's what we do already for anybody that leaves us. They end up paying for it, but they only pay it through their age 65. And in this year, I think it's around 20, and I think next year was around 4 or 5 in number. And each year we would evaluate. So there's no guarantee in 22, 23 that this would be offered. Because there would be an analysis done to see what it would happen. And if you can imagine, we have several employees over the age of 60, right? And so it would be like a ladder. So as they get to 65, that benefit goes away. What would happen is that some of those positions that we would backfill because they're firemen, right? But they're already at higher than the midpoint, probably towards the top of their pay scale. So as we hire back, we're hiring firefighters at a lower rate. And then secondly, there are positions that some of the directors are looking at that if they were to take them in their particular department, they could not necessarily backfill them, or they could restructure, and instead of backfilling both, they would only backfill one, right? So it just gives us some flexibility, and that's also part of what we're recommending. Again, to Bijou's question earlier, much like the library, if I hear tonight that you're okay with that plan, I would make the announcement tomorrow that this is something so that those 20 or so employees could start thinking about it. And then we would give them a certain amount of time after the adoption of the budget, because that's when we have the assurance, that they could then let us know. And during the course of the year, I think 4 or 5 other employees hit the 25-year mark.
Yeah.
And so what would happen is we would come back to you eventually and be able to say, okay, this is how it worked. Cities around us do different things when it comes to the retirees and incentivizing them out of the organization, if you will. So that's part of this plan as well. And I'm sorry, I should have mentioned it earlier, but that's part of the recommendation we have. With the full idea that if we, if we get 3 or 4 a year for the next couple of years that we don't backfill, that gets us to that 10, which helps us reduce our overall expenditures. Because as I don't know if there's a chart on there tonight or not, but our biggest cost is in our personnel. Well, there you go. Personnel. So thank you. Sorry to interrupt, Kim.
No, this is, I believe, the end of the general fund expenditures, and it's the same thing, just shown a different way. It's shown by classification, so you can see how much we're spending on salary and benefits, supplies, maintenance, transfers, capital. I pretty much covered those as I went through the division, pointing out, what they were, and this is at the bottom of your page 18. And with that, I'm done presenting expenditures unless you have any questions.
Brianna?
Hey, quick question. So Mike, thank you for bringing that up, and I think it's a great idea. We've done that at our company, and I've seen it done at other companies, right? And it provides the opportunity. You're not telling everyone they have to leave, but it provides the opportunity, provides for them and for us to potentially restructure and think through what things look like going forward. Are you looking for direction from us on that, or are you just saying that's what we're going to implement?
That's what we have in the budget.
Okay.
So that's part of the recommendation.
Okay.
And this evening, just as a discussion, whatever happens with the discussion, if I hear generally that there's support for that, my only announcement to those employees is you can start thinking about it. Until the council passes the budget, it isn't.
Right.
I don't have it
That
to
way you give
offer.
them time. Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And
Okay.
then we would give them time, and
Understood.
we've been talking about some options about what that time frame is. Just so you'll know, not tonight's the first night publicly, being said, because it's the first time that you're hearing it. The employees don't know.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
And this is new, and that's why he's bringing it out as a separate, just FYI.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Could I get a clarification? I think last time when Dennis from library came and talked about some of the employees not wanting to transfer or become a full-time employees, I think within Mark he had mentioned about maybe that why was that? Well, he asked, well, why was that? And I think part of the answer was that we provide full health benefit whether they're part-time or full-time. Was that?
There were multiple answers in there. One of them had to do just scheduling, in terms of some people just choose part-time. Then the question was, we have part-time employees with no benefits, and we have part-time basically with like half-time benefits. I guess it's a way to describe it. And I don't know if they're part-time with benefit. I don't know if they're part-time with benefits or part-time without benefits. But we offer that to different people.
And is that in all different, I guess, departments?
It just depends on what's going on in the department. There's a judgment. They work with HR to make a determination if that's a position.
There's only 2 departments that have part-time people.
The core and the library. Oh, there you go.
And they're both actually offered in the similar way that they have a full benefit somewhere, or even if they're part-time?
No part-timers have full benefits. They only get half.
Only half.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some that are no benefits
No
at all.
benefits. Yes.
And what, if you don't mind me asking, what makes the difference in terms of?
Like a lifeguard is part-time without any benefits, is that right? They're like a seasonal employee.
Yeah, depending on hours or.
A lot of times it's seasonals that are part-time, no benefits.
No benefits. But if they are not seasonal, they do get some benefits.
Yeah, like if you're a part-time cashier, those would come with benefits, half benefits.
So if you think about walking into the core, there's usually Rebecca or someone that's there fairly regularly. That type of position with that regular schedule that has opportunities for hours throughout the year would likely qualify as a potential part-time benefit employee. Whereas with the pools, lifeguards are very seasonal. We don't need them all the time, so we don't even offer them benefits.
And those two are the only one that actually have?
The two departments, yes.
And how many are there total?
We do what we call a full-time equivalent calculation. So whenever you hear us talk about the Corps has 0.37 people, it has to do with the number of operating hours weighed against the dollars in the budget. And the number of bodies could be vastly larger than the full-time equivalent calculation. And it really depends on function and what they're needed for.
I'm not talking about right now, but I would like to get the numbers next time.
Okay.
Okay.
It doesn't list. So yeah, we'll have to get you the numbers.
I have one more item. If you would turn to page 8, it's Mayor Council's budget. So the Mayor Council's budget is about $47,000 less than the current year adopted, and the decrease is the net effect of we reduced legislative travel by $20,000 since it's not a legislative year. We decreased special projects since some of the arts and nonprofits that are included in the HOT Fund are no longer included in the Mayor Council. And then we increased your capital outlay to include the change to the workspace at the dais. And
That's what we're redesigning. As you know, right now, there's shared screens, and the cutouts don't allow a lot of movement for those screens and everything on those lines. And so we're not redoing the entire dais. We're just talking about the desktop, so that you can all have your screens and have your own space.
You're kidding.
Clip.
You won't get kicked off the edge. Your own special location.
It's a new day.
I know, lucky you.
I'm happy to answer any questions about the Mayor Council budget.
Anybody have any questions?
That concludes.
Kevin?
Quick question. I know that we had, as a council, had expressed that we wanted like the cameras and the work session room and stuff like that. Where is that expense? Was it?
So that qualifies for those PEG funds that are earmarked, and technically we budget it in a services account in Hannah's budget, the Community Information Office.
Oh, awesome. Thank you.
So you recall the PEG, restricted for PEGs that Mike showed you on the fund balance whiteboard? That's the money that will be used to cover that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Any other questions?
John?
Yeah, the special projects and other services, I don't know if you mentioned this, but what are those consisting of?
So if you turn to page 10, it lists out your special projects and services.
Actually, I have a question.
Yeah.
I have a question. Team leadership. We didn't do team leadership last year, so where's that 2,100?
From the current year, what it will do is just flow into fund balance.
Perfect. Okay. Because I don't know where, I think it's being revamped, and so just wanted to see where that would go. Thank you.
What are the other services? I'm not, sorry, I'm not
I was
familiar
about
with these.
about to say, you want to tell them.
Yeah, that's okay.
Who these
Yeah,
people are?
Dan, so as this past legislative session's gone on, Dan Shelley and Jennifer Rodriguez, who work with us down in Austin, and the Solutions for Local Control is Fred Hill. HMWK is John Kroll, who works with us specifically on sales tax. the sales tax law, sales tax implementation. So he's been with us, working with us on that. And then David Margulies works with Hannah, but he has been with the city from a contractual standpoint. He does training for example, for not only press releases, but if you're doing any kind of news, like he works with the police department. David also works with us on doing the state of the city, for example. I don't want to call him a PR firm because that's not the correct thing, but he is a media person who we work with. For example, on the lawsuit that we're working on right now, we work with David to help us on our messaging. That, I don't know how to describe his expertise, but that's what he does. David used to be, was on Channel 8?
Well, I'm not sure the channel.
But yeah, David's been in our community, when I say our community, in the Dallas-Fort Worth area for a long time in media relations. Maybe that's the best way to say it, media relations.
Sorry, who was Dan Shelley?
Dan Shelley and Jennifer Rodriguez. There have been times that they were probably on a Zoom call, John.
There are legislative lobbyists.
Okay.
Right.
They've been working with the city for a very long time.
So like when we were working on killing 4072, that was their efforts tremendously.
Dan Shelley, real quick, is a former senator.
And Fred Hill's a former
And Fred Hill's
House of Representatives.
Right.
Is there any change from previous years to this year?
The dollar amount is the same.
Yeah, the same?
Right, on page 8, it shows you the actual for 2020, the adopted for 2021, amended for fiscal year 20, and then the proposed.
I see.
PG? Yeah. Michael, where did we include the lawsuit cost?
It's illegal. City attorney, which that's under.
It's under the general government
I was gonna
category.
say general government.
What page?
Legal.
16.
An example, when this was developed, DeSoto and Humboldt had not joined us yet, and so we don't show any revenue coming in to offset any of the cost of that lawsuit.
So, I thought you mentioned you wanted to budget 150 or 250?
250.
Right. So, and additional is for the fees for city.
For Bob.
Bob.
In court, does David, I'm just asking Jennifer out loud, sorry, does David show up in the municipal court as far as a prosecutor, or does he show up here?
He shows up in the municipal.
Municipal court, okay, that's what I thought. David Berman, the prosecutor.
David who?
Berman. The only thing that I would like to add is within the last month, two things have come to our attention that are not included in the budget. The first has to do with MetroCrest Services. MetroCrest Services has started, well, they actually started in 2020, before COVID, a capital campaign to build a new facility so that they can better serve the four cities, Farmers Branch, Addison, and Carrollton, as long as Coppell. We met with Tracy about a month ago, Tracy Eubanks, about a month ago, and they have, I think they've raised, Bijou, correct me if I'm wrong, I think they've raised a little over $6 million so far.
Yeah.
Their goal is above 12. I just don't remember off the top of my head what the exact number is. But Tracy has asked for the four cities if we would consider contributing to their capital campaign. They asked for a $2 million contribution from the four cities. Tracy has done he called it a fair share. Our fair share is $80,000. Carrollton is the biggest chunk, then Farmers Branch, and then Addison, basically with 4%. And if Tracy has submitted a letter He knew that we had already produced the budget, so he knew from a process standpoint where we were. We told him that we would come and mention this to council this evening, and if there is an interest in doing that, then we can designate it out of the fund balance. And when you approve the budget on the 10th, it would just be set up there so that when it's time for the 4 cities to make their contribution, we would all make our contribution at the same time and do an amended budget as far as that's concerned.
Or we know we're going to have to make changes to the budget because of property values.
Right.
We could go ahead and fold it in the budget if you
okay.
require.
Either way, we have options. So that's my first, it's, as you call it, kind of a thumbs up, thumbs down. I know it's the first you're hearing it. There would be a formal presentation. There's no question about that. But for planning purposes where we are right now, is there, would it be okay if we at least budget one way or the other the $80,000?
Does anybody have any heartache with that? Bijou, you okay? Don? John?
You know, I would like to sit on it for a little bit. We're heading into the sales tax reduction revenue, and I understand it's a portion, and I know that they're trying to build a new one further away from where they are right now, and I just don't know how much of, I don't know, I'd like to kind of sit on it and think about it a little bit more.
Okay.
With our budget crunch.
We can put it in the designation in fund balance. That way it's not in the budget. It's not impacted by the tax rate. And then we would come back as an amendment once you guys approved it. We could do it that way also.
And I think the timing, just so, this is not a rush. The timing is such, if I remember right, he's trying to get it before October, the commitment.
And the reason is there is a $2 million offer. If they come up with the $2 million to match. So that's why there is a rush. Well, at least a rush in the MetroCrest, not here.
Right.
So somebody offered $2 million to MetroCrest, provided MetroCrest comes up with $2 million too. So it's like a matching fund.
So, appreciating what John's saying, again, we're not spending it or anything along those lines, and there will be a formal presentation. It's just a matter of how we put it on paper.
Just earmark it.
Yeah.
And then we can talk about it.
So until that day comes, until you actually make the vote, you haven't written that check.
Sure.
So that gives you time. And it also, I have the presentation that he gave to us, and we'll get more of those so we can send those out so y'all have plenty of time to take a look at it. The other thing that's happened is, you know, you've been hearing a lot about mental health issues as far as the first responders, you know, in terms of, and I'm only going to tell you this story because it just happens in Coppell. It was this past weekend, right? A gentleman had mental health challenges, was basically running naked on Sandy Lake Road. And when they got him to take him to the Carrollton Police Department, once he got over to the Carrollton Police Department, and look, they're trained over there as well, they didn't want to physically even be in the same space as this person. I mean, he was just that disturbed. So they ended up taking him to Parkland, right, in terms of what's going on. So that's just one example. Things do happen in Coppell. Of course, there's family violence and those kinds of things. And so you've kind of heard, they're called strike teams, basically. And they have first responder, they have a social worker, and a third, sometimes a mental health specialist, basically. And so, I never say his name correctly, the district attorney. Crusoe has access to funds and has approached Carrollton, Addison, Farmers Branch, and Coppell and asked if we would be interested in doing a 4-city study for, is there a demand in the 4 cities for that kind of service? The estimate on the study cost is $300,000. The county would bring $200,000 to the table, and the 4 cities would split it up, the $25,000 a piece for that. It's something they want to kick off now, so it's not a matter of in this particular budget, but it is something that is they want to get started sooner than later. They would, again, we would make a formal presentation to you to let you know about what the proposal is, what they would do, how it would work, and if you're okay with that, I will bring that to the council for your consideration in the next couple of council meetings.
Would this group act as a operating entity within one of the cities, or would the people be spread out over?
That would all be determined as part of the study. The idea would be that if the strike team were created, the high likelihood is, again, kind of the Carrollton Farmers Branch would have a higher use for it, but the fire chief and the police chief in Coppell have been part of the discussion as well. They're supportive of it. For those times when we do need it, would be nice to have. I have no idea what the cost is. I only know what the study is, and the study's purpose is to do nothing but identify, first, is there a need? What are the resources that are available already? And if there's a gap, how does the gap get filled? And here's how that plan would work.
So this would be sort of like our police department and fire department that are sharing resources with other cities anyway.
That's correct.
And that's what I was going to ask you. I know you said that you don't know, but to study, we understand the cost, but going forward, what are we looking at? I mean, and like you talked about how this might be a rare thing, and if we have a fixed cost going forward with this, and
yeah, understanding the question, I wouldn't even put a ballpark figure on it because we're not even there yet in terms of just, you don't even know that there's a need, and then I don't know how the cost would be shared and where it would be housed. So that's all unknown. So if we didn't do something just because we didn't know it, I don't know how to answer the question.
Kevin?
Maybe kind of expanding a little bit. I know that you said that they were going to contribute $200,000, and obviously they're getting $100,000. They want the $100,000 from us, split up 4 ways. Was there any mention of them kicking in funds long term, to support a program?
No.
Okay, just the study. Just the study was the only thing that.
I'm only talking to you about the study. Anything beyond the study, I'm not going to speculate.
Cool.
Brianna?
I guess if you're looking for direction from the standpoint of would we like to hear about it, I would say yes, I'd like to hear about it.
Okay.
And I say that,
reasonable.
and because otherwise, you're right, I mean, we all have questions and we don't know them until we hear from them. I just would like to say that, I mean, it would be, we used to have a Living Well in Coppell program, right? And I don't even know what that looks like anymore, and at some point we might want to figure out how this fits or if it fits, and if that's not the right conversation or not the right program or opportunity or whatever it may be, maybe there's something else, right? We know mental health is a big issue, and it's definitely impacting so many in Coppell, and so all that to say is I would be open to the conversation so we can ask the questions and then decide as a council whether it's something that fits our needs or not.
Right. You're right. That's all I was asking.
Yep. So I'm saying if that's what you're looking for, I'm
Can I bring the presentation forward?
hearing about it. Sorry.
Don?
So can I talk about the budget?
Let's in just a moment. So I think, am I hearing a thumbs up to bring forth the presentation and discuss it?
Yeah, I mean,
We're in the
let's look
body,
at it.
sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's worth hearing.
Got a yes.
Okay.
But
Yes.
Do you want a commitment or a direction from us to spend 25,000?
No.
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 Just
Money.
No.
Just presentation.
Knowing it's gonna cost money, I just wanted to bring it up because it's
Bring it
like,
up.
we're in the middle of budget and
This is we're gonna go find out more and we'll be able to determine how much it's gonna cost. Because quite honestly, to be fair, the study, I'm okay, whatever the costs are, I think it's worth that. But in the long term, we would only be a small percentage of the overall cost of the team because Carrollton's gonna have the lion's share of the use. And so we typically have been very good about splitting out things by the use percentage, so,
And
I
you should split the study percentage too.
probably will, but we'll.
Not equally, I'm talking about.
Well,
Not equal.
We want to use the metric rest formula.
Right.
Where we have to pay, what, $80,000 or $80,000 out of 4
4%.
million?
But I don't know that applies to at a per capita, but look, let's not bog down there.
okay, Don?
Some just semantic question, just so for understanding. On the debt service, there's not like, and I'm maybe getting way out of my lane, but are any of these bonds refundable? Or do we have other opportunity for to save on rates? Is that even a possibility at this point?
Yes.
Okay.
But what we do is every April, about that time frame, we have the financial advisor look through and say, are there any bonds that can be refunded when we do our bond issue, say like for Royal Lane?
Okay.
And we just did that.
Yeah, we
in
just
April.
refunded, but you can only refund 90 days within, but the period is 90 days between when they're callable.
Okay.
Because if you refund any other time, they become taxable.
Okay,
The
but
bonds that you refund.
there may be opportunity on some of these
Yes. We
in the
look-
future
yeah, we
sometime.
look
And
every year.
I assumed you did.
Mhm.
Page 20 for the fund balance, just breakdown, just to make sure I understand some of this. The CRDC maintenance, so that is an accumulation of the transfer overs from the past for
Yes.
CRDC, is that
Yes.
correct? And then we will use those funds at some point in the future or when we need to for
We have been
maintenance?
using them at about $1 million a year now.
Okay, so that actually probably is that fund, I mean, this assigned is decreasing
Will
over
be
time.
decreasing,
Okay.
yes.
The capital outlay 5-year forecast of $9 million, does the, like I think on page 19, it's 571 is in the general fund capital outlay, but I'm assuming that's not coming out of this 9.6 assigned balance, is that correct?
So this was the 5-year forecast. It was kind of, we just did the new one this year and kind of presented the new document and philosophy to council a few months back.
Mm-hmm.
That amount comes from that document, what's projected over the next 5 years to be needed in capital outlay.
It can come from either that number or it can come from that sales tax number. Because
Okay.
remember, we said it was one-time purchases.
So we basically just put back some fund balance for what was projected.
What was
and then-
projected for the capital outlay in the 5-year forecast.
Okay. And then the $1.2 million we're going to pull over out of sales tax, that's not actually showing up on any of these pages, is it? That would fill the gap between revenues and expenses.
Right, that was part of Mike's
Yeah.
presentation.
And then for you on.
Yes, sir.
On the potential retirement opportunities. I guess, and I'm confident we do, but I assume we feel that we have pretty good bench strength. Like if I can't imagine all 20 would retire all at the same time, but if we feel like we have good bench strength in case we lose a lot of experience.
Right.
Is that right?
The department that has the potential for the highest number of retirees is the fire department.
Okay.
And from a standpoint of where those firemen are, yeah, there's tremendous experience in there. So, but I call it the kind of the gap, the way he describes it. He has a big group that came in the early 90s. I'm looking at Jennifer because she was here. And then for the last probably 10 years or so, there's been a whole new group. So this group has been coming through right behind them, though there's a little bit of a gap.
Okay.
But when you ask about the bench, if you know Chief Richardson, they just do such a phenomenal job on training and everything along those lines. He's got some great people ready to step up. So this will also create some of that movement, which is always good, especially for those mid that they do have, and then it just kind of has that trickle effect.
Okay, I was confident that we felt good about the staff that would be coming up behind them, but.
I'm sorry, you just reminded me. One of the things we do as well as succession planning. We spend a lot of time on our training and succession planning in our organization. So that's throughout all the departments.
Sure. Okay. And then the last thing, you talked about what's being proposed in the budget is offering the packages. So what aspect of that is in the budget? Because those FTEs are still funded, because we'll be backfilling at least some of those. Is that correct?
Right.
So I guess when you say that this proposal is in the budget, is it just the medical benefit piece, and is it for all 20, or what's?
No, it's for all 20, even though they won't all take it.
Okay.
With the expectation, and as far as backfilling, it's, those positions are still funded until it happens. And until we say, okay, we're going to freeze that particular position, I couldn't tell you specifically, what that position would be.
Okay. But the piece that's in the budget to take care of that is paying for those benefits if they were taken.
If they were all taken.
If they were all taken.
And if only half of them take it, I still got the employee, so I'm still carrying that insurance anyway. So it's not a new cost.
Got it.
I think that may be what you might be asking.
Well, that's what I was trying to figure out, is when you say this is in the budget, it's like, well, what?
It's not a new cost.
What dollars
Right.
in there? But, so it's not a new cost until they take it, and then if you replace that person, I guess it's an incremental cost.
It's an incremental
right?
cost, right.
But until you replace that person, it's not. Okay. I think that's all.
So, just to piggyback on that question, if a 63-year-old person, this is for an example, for me to understand, a 63-year-old person comes and says, I want to retire. Each month the cost is $900?
It's around $900, I understand.
Yeah, $943.
So that brings up to close to $10,000 a year just for the insurance purpose, right? 10,000 plus 10,000, 20,000 is what we have to pay.
Right, and then it drops off completely.
Right. If we don't backfill that position.
Well, even if you backfill the position, you'd have the cost, but at 65, it completely goes away.
Right,
at that point.
yeah, I got it, okay.
But the question I had was, you talked about giving others opportunity to move up. And if they do move up, and if you're actually giving them the same, I guess, similar expenditure of the salaries as they move up.
Yeah, because they wouldn't have the years of experience, they wouldn't
would not be.
necessarily, right?
The fire and police salary structures work a little differently. And so what you really do is you allow the people for the opportunity to move up in the future as they gain the seniority, but you actually end up backfilling with a much more junior person for that position, even though the position itself is being filled by some of your existing staff.
So it doesn't come with the same salary.
Right. Kevin?
Would that also mean, like, let's say I've got two people at X level, if they take advantage of it, and then the director ultimately decides, well, we could combine that, then you have a net savings because only one person is filling that?
Yeah, right. That's
at
where
a lower...
That's where the restructure comes in.
Okay.
And I'll give you another example with the police department. It's possible for him to backfill with a civilian as opposed to a licensed police officer, depending on the position. That's a less expensive.
Remember the gentleman, I don't remember his name, shame on me, that they were talking about was their analyst?
Oh, yeah.
That used to be, back years ago, was filled by a sworn officer. So that's just one example of some of the changes that's been made.
Jim Connor.
Yeah, Jim. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He said, yeah.
Brainiac. The genius.
He is pretty
All right.
sure.
Anybody have any other comments or questions? So before Jennifer closes us out, I would like to take us back to page 10 under our special projects. This was the list of our 501c3s that we talked about a couple of weeks ago. I just wanted to make sure that everybody was on board, or at least we have a consensus opinion, which is a majority of the people here, that these numbers are acceptable.
The individual numbers for the
Yeah.
groups.
Yes. We will have one more chance, but so every time we do this, it gets a little bit more formal, so. These numbers are what we did discuss the other day. Yes, Don?
And the YMCA Coppell, it's got a 20 and a 10, that's that breakout, the total of 30, but 20 of it's gonna be sort of the baseline contribution, and 10 sort of this one time. The idea was that the one time, is that the way it's laid out here? Okay. Just making sure.
Yeah, and we'll write that in the contract.
Okay.
We had another one that was done that way as well, what, didn't we?
Is it a hot funds?
The ballet ensemble a few years
Hot.
ago.
Okay,
Oh,
thank you.
Yeah, but it was the chorale
Yeah.
that was gonna be
This year.
split.
4 and 4, but that's out of the hot fund.
Yeah, I have a question on that. I know we did receive an email from YMCA breaking down the percentage. And so I was looking at that email, I didn't get the full picture of how many people from Coppell were using the subsidized childcare program. Was that in the email?
No.
Okay.
It was just the percentage, it was based on a percentage.
So we were looking for Coppell residents
Right.
using the subsidized childcare.
Okay, that's a separate question then.
Okay,
I
okay,
can find out for you.
okay, yeah.
All right. Anybody have any comments, questions? Otherwise, we're going to continue with Jennifer.
All right, I'm going to close this out in the budget discussion. I just want to make sure that we have everything that we need for making sure we've got everything for the next Thursday night. We are going to put $80,000 in designated fund balance for the capital campaign for MetroCrest. Are we good on that one? Okay. You want a detail of the part-time employees, benefits, no benefits. And then we'll ensure that the library and the core have the necessary dollars to open up to pre-COVID levels. All right. So, what's next in your budget process? On Tuesday night, there'll be an agenda item that proposes a maximum tax rate of 58 cents. This item is a record vote, which is now required under Senate Bill 2, regardless of whatever tax rate we set. Before, it had to exceed a certain limit. This now, it's whatever tax rate, we have to have a record vote. And then we'll include that record vote in our notice of meeting to vote on the tax rate publication. That will be published on July 31st. It has to be done at least 5 days before the public hearing and the vote on August 10th. Just to reiterate, this is not a vote on the tax rate. This is only a vote for us to publicize that the tax rate will not exceed the 58 cents. So once we get values, we cannot go above 58 cents. We can go anywhere below it, but not above. And that's what this agenda item is just doing, setting the maximum amount that we can go as a tax rate. And it's required by Senate Bill 2. So I'll be bringing that forward on next Tuesday. And that's all of it I have in the general comments.
And then we have the work session next Thursday
Thursday.
night, the 29th. That's when you start really buttoning up the budget. Between now and then, if you have any questions or anything along those lines, please let us know, because that's when we have the greatest amount of flexibility. Because by August the 5th, Casey and Jennifer and Kim and Tamara actually produce the budget document that is what you will be considering at the public hearing. That's when we go through that longer presentation. Not that we go through it like we did here, but it's just a longer presentation for the public, just kind of what's in it and how it works. So anything that you have, we're here to help any way that we can if you have any questions or anything along those lines. And after the 29th, the document will be firmed up. You'll get a copy of the document. It'll be posted on the webpage. Then we have the public hearing, and the way it works now is you'll be voting.
Yes.
Again, welcome to Senate Bill 2, which is really strange because that's not the way it used to be, but that's the way they have us doing it now.
Yeah,
So-
the way it used to be, we would have 2 votes on the tax rate, or 2 public hearings on the tax rate. Now they've combined it, and you couldn't vote at the same night,
Right.
so you had to have another meeting. The way they did it now is you have the public hearing and you have the vote same night, and only 1 public hearing.
And remember, that's all being, even though we're not exceeding the 3.499%, and at the 58 cents, I presume it's probably within the 3.499 if it comes up anyway. That's all predicated on, because of the vote
Yes.
notification and everything along those lines, if you were going to be holding an election. So I'm saying this, you have some flexibility. That's just the time frame that lays out based on SB 2.
So do we still do our, after the August, 10th meeting? Do we have another meeting after that to actually formally adopt it, or is it done at that meeting?
It's done at the August 10th meeting.
So we don't have to have the stuff in September anymore?
No.
Ad infinitum? All right. Don?
In the valuations, if I'm looking at these numbers right, there's about $400 million gap between current and what the July 19th estimation, right? There's about $400 million. There's no chance that $400 million will completely evaporate, because if $500 million evaporated, the maximum tax rate is going to mean our revenues are going to drop. Am I thinking about that correctly?
Say that.
No.
I don't think, I couldn't hear you clearly. So now I want to make sure I understand your question.
There's $400 million difference in the valuation estimate and this year's number.
Yes, okay.
If it dropped $500 million, or $500 million, or like $500 million.
Okay, that's the reason why I wanted to make sure I understand this question.
Yes,
It
so
actually drops below our current.
If it drops below our current, but for some, there's no
Right.
crazy,
Right.
by the time we get certified values, it's not going to drop that much, where the 58 cents is going to
So
be detrimental.
if it did that, then they would calculate the no new revenue rate. I don't know for sure how the calculation's going to work, but in theory, it would probably mean it would need to go up above the 58 cents, and you wouldn't have the ability to do that.
Okay, that's what and we would just have to adjust the budget to stay within the reduced revenue.
We would have different tools that we could use then to adjust accordingly.
Okay.
That's why I needed to make sure I understood the question.
Well, I just wanted I didn't know if the maximum tax rate, if you are backing yourself into a corner too tight. But I guess we have the flexibility. That's what it comes down to.
Right.
We have the
We're
flexibility.
there, the tax rate gets set, but you have the flexibility because of the strength of everything to
Yeah.
be able to adjust.
That if something weird happened, we would be fine.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
If we lost all of that, I would be panicking.
So that means you don't expect that.
I don't expect a total loss to where it's exactly flat.
And I know, and you estimated the revenue budget based on the current values, right? So we've
Right.
got that whole $400 million valuation to
There's
play
some
with.
free, there's freeboard in there.
Yeah.
So base your concern on her estimated increase, which was 4.27%, I think, is that right?
I said it was going to be less than 4.27, yes.
So that number, she's usually pretty close, Don.
Okay.
She's
I just wanted to
She's usually
clarify.
really close. Okay, Bijou?
Yeah, I just have a question for Hannah. This is for the budget input email. Did we get any questions from the residents?
No, sir, we did not.
Where did we advertise that email address?
It has been included in all of our messaging related to budget, so all of our social media posts, all of the news releases that have gone out on our majority digital screens. So everywhere that we've published budget messaging, we've included that.
I've seen it.
Yeah, I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
Residents have plenty of opportunity to email us if they have questions.
It's
see, you're doing a better job than you thought.
He's leaving town, what does he care?
So anybody have any other questions? So I take it we are concluded with our budget discussions?
It didn't take 500 hours.
What's that?
It didn't take 500 hours with your estimate.
So I'm going to move on to item number 7, which is our second citizens appearance. Persons wishing to speak during the citizens appearance must sign in the appropriate register with the city secretary unless they're residents. Did we have anybody sign up?
Nobody signed up.
All right, thank you. With that being said, there being no further business before the council, we're adjourned at 7:55.
Okay, staff, thank you.